So awesome. Next, we got a little bit of soccer to sprinkle in here.
Go.
It's a big summer of soccer, as you guys all know.
Baby.
Man, it's pretty much from morning until night. There's a game going on right now, even Argentina versus Chile.
Mm-hmm.
You got a little Messi sighting in there. So a lot to go over. There's even going to be Olympics coming up. We've talked about that a little bit for basketball. There's also obviously soccer as well. So there's a lot of summer soccer, and that's not even discussing any of the transfers and things that are coming up, because summer, as we all know, for those who watch club, is the main time where these big names, big faces are going to end up changing jerseys, swapping geographical locations. And so it'll be very exciting to see. There'll be nothing that'll really stop us from having news.
Whew. Got some news on the board just right now, man. Got some wild stuff happening. Got some wild stuff happening. We'll get to that. We'll get to our next segment, but let's get through that. Let's get through that soccer first, and then we'll get to the news update.
Oh boy, yeah. I got it.
Damn, we haven't done that. Damn.
Five first though as well.
Oh, that's woo! I didn't see that part. Okay, yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, we definitely got some news. NBA's blessing us, as we said, man. The summer never will let you sleep for too long. But pretty much where we're at right now is we're on the last day of the Euros in terms of the group stage. So that means tomorrow, after the games wrap up, there'll be 4 games. After those games wrap up, all the group stage is over. Wherever all these teams end up finishing respectively in their groups will be how the rest of these matchups end up being selected for the round of 16, which is then what they call the knockout stage. So I'm going to go over a little bit of scores first and foremost, and just in terms of what happened recently. But I'm also going to give you guys a little outlook on some potential matchups and who I really think at the end of the day is kind of not shown up yet. And, it's really, the tournament doesn't start till the knockout phase. So, how teams end up dealing with the group stage has kind of changed over time. And there are a lot of teams that play it very, very meticulously in terms of I just want to skate by. They know the minimum of what they need, and they're willing to finish first or second, knowing that if you're a top third place finishing team, you're going to advance as well now. So there's a lot of looseness in how all this goes down. But we had some of the saddest stuff in terms of teams who have left. We had Croatia, who ended up checking out.
See you later.
And they've had it tough pretty much ever since they went on and snagged themselves a World Cup. They had a World Cup, the finals appearance, which that's nothing to scoff at, and they were all at the peak of their primes. Modric, Perisic, those guys, and they even had I'm forgetting his Rakitic. But they've aged out, and they just don't have the same kind of golden generation that's filling in these shoes as they're leaving. So it's sad to see some of these guys who really are fighters and who are we're known to see winning, just not have enough gas, not be able to go the full games. But at the end of the day, leaving all their heart out on the field. Modric played really well this tournament. They actually could potentially advance, but it's going to be very, very hard because of the fact that, in that last second, they really allowed Albania to score that goal, tie it up 2-2, which is nuts. I mean, that is a game that I don't, I just talked about how they're old, but that doesn't matter. When you're playing a team like Albania, you put
me playing the Albanian
dog.
league.
You put me out there.
On the same team
put me out there with Modric. We'll figure it out. So sad day for Croatia in that sense, and I truly feel like that's when they lost it. Even though that last game, they went at it, obviously, and went right at Italy and gave them all that they had. It was very clear that it's you're in a group with Spain and Italy. You got to take what you can everywhere else. You got to go snag that up. And so I really felt like they lost control of that group when they tied Albania. Because, starting off tying is totally fine. But, when they started off losing that game to Spain, and then you go and tie Albania. I think you're looking at yourself like, we've done this to ourselves. So sorry to say, Croatia, we've got long ties in terms of me rooting for you, but that checker jersey's out of here. I'm sorry to
Thumbs
say.
up.
That brings me to the same thing. This is Group B, which to me I'm starting off with just because it's the group of death, and because some of these games happened recently. But in terms of Spain, they're probably the top team right now in terms of in form. 3-0, very smoothly handling these teams. It seems like their roster construction, they're not very deep, but it seems like that starting 11 is really like that. And they have a nice mixture of veterans and youngsters, which is, in my opinion, how you usually see the winning teams in this tournament constructed, is a nice split between old, young, youthful energy and, that veteran savviness. And then you had Italy, who, at the end of the day, really just fought their way through this. As any Italian team would. They're like, we're barely going to score any goals. Their goal differential, as usual, is a beautiful zero. So that's their forte, right? So if anybody knows the Italian defense, if you played soccer, you probably got taught this at some point. It's basically everybody's behind the midline when the opposing team has the ball. That's the Italian defense. That's how it's structured. It can be manipulated in different ways, but that's how it goes. We're sitting back here and we're waiting on you. And it, for them, it works a lot. And the reality is they don't produce a lot of high-end attackers either. So it does make sense that it's like, if they are able to get, let's say a Lewandowski in his prime on their team, or they're able to get, like a Haaland at some time is Italian, maybe they'll switch it up. But at this point, you play FIFA, I play FIFA.
Balotelli, bring him back.
That's the last time. And you're only ever getting what? Center backs, really, right? When you're pulling an Italian, if he's good, it's a center back.
Yeah.
So
CDM.
Exactly. You use that back four kind of lane, and then you might get a CDM in there. So you had them scraping through. That's the group of the death. That's how it's going to end up finishing out. It'll be very interesting to see how these teams end up getting matched up with other teams. In Group A, we have Germany, who are going to end up finishing first. They, too, probably look like the other team that is kind of in motion. They've got things going. They seem to have figured out a lineup that they're consistent with. They're bringing in subs in the same way each game, and it's working effectively. And finally, they look fast enough. I mean, I think something that a lot of people always complain about with Germany, and if you play with them in FIFA, they're just slow. I mean, they're just flat out hard to get down the field with. Most of the guys on that team are like 67 pace, again, referencing FIFA. But slow. You're not getting out of there with those guys. But you have, Musiala, you have Sane, you have Gnabry. You have some of these guys now who bring a different look, you know what I mean? And
you just named all the black guys on the team.
Well, I mean, that's why you got to say a different look, you know what I mean? And they have Timo Werner as well, who's also very fast up top.
Can't finish the
same. You know what I mean? Well, this year he was a lot better on Tottenham, you know what I mean? But none of those other dudes can either. None of them black dudes can either. Those are not finishers either. But they will get down there and they will kick that ball across. And then Musiala, he's not super fast, but he has the creative energy, that buzz that you need from a 10, from a maestro. And, Germany is known to have the more Thomas Mueller sniper types at that position, which are good for the style that they play. But again, this is just allowing them to play differently. And so I think it makes them a lot harder to deal with. And their defense is finally looking a little better as well. Also, Gundogan might be the most underrated player in the world right now. The guy just shows up everywhere, plays super well for Barcelona, plays super well for Germany. And then, obviously we all know what he did when he was with Man City. So the Swiss are going to go ahead and finish that group second with 2 ties and a win. Beautiful work by them, how they navigated this group. The team is good. They're pretty much everything a Swiss team is. I think I brought the Swiss up before. They're just a team. They just have players that play in Europe all across every position, but none of them are necessarily like stars, but they're all right there, willing to play together, willing to go get it. And you can definitely see that in how they play, but they're just mistake-free. And this kind of performance in the group stage shows exactly that. They just made no mistakes. They let you make the mistakes. They capitalize and they advance. Hungary, I felt kind of hard pressed for. Played very well. They got a couple. I talked about them as well. They got a couple talents now who are actually world class talents. I think it's going to end up taking a little more. They give you a little bit of that Lewandowski in their prime vibes, and even Haaland and Zlatan, where it's like, God, you're going to just have to be a superstar. You know what I mean, to make this happen. But nonetheless, it's sad to see. Yeah. So Hungary, man, valiant effort. Shout out to all you Hungarians. Keep it up, man. It's good to see you guys have some world stars finally. Scotland, never saw you guys this whole tournament. Finished 0-1-2. That'd be 1 tie, 2 losses. Not worth talking about. Andy Robertson, Liverpool's man. That's the notable guy. Also, Kieran Tierney, who both so happen to play left back. Yeah, Tomine as well. He's all right, McTominay. But the two most notable players on their team both play left back, which is unfortunate, and they're just not it. Next, so that was Group A. We've gone over Group B as well. That was the group of death that I started with. Group C, we have England finishing that group first, very nastily. This is probably every England fan's nightmare, other than not advancing out of the group stage, just because they look awful. This group was not strong. This group wasn't weak either, but it wasn't a strong group. There's no gimmies in this group, and it's a group that doesn't really. It's a very defensive group. But England, by all stretches, should be head and shoulders above these guys. This team, even for England standards, is super freaking talented. I think they have one of the worst coaches in it. I think Gareth Southgate is awful. I think that the way he's choosing these players, I feel like he wants out. Cole Palmer, who I feel like is maybe the most informed player for England right now in terms of what he did for Chelsea. Only Erling Haaland had more goal contributions than him in the Premier League last year. And the guy just got his first minutes today and was in there, getting active, even though they ended up still tying. Who would have thunk? It's like they got him in there and he really did start to change the tide of things. And to see a cat like that who's young and playing primed out, and he's getting his first PT in game 3, to me, that's coaching. And to me, you have to figure it out, fire the guy. But I don't see them getting very much farther. I wouldn't be surprised if they get knocked out in this next round. And then it looks like good old Denmark will advance with 3 ties, which is nasty, and that'll just be on goal differential and as well cards. Slovenia, sadly, when you're a third-place team and you've only had 3 ties, you're just not going to advance. So we have Serbia, who, again, just like a bunch of these last-place teams like Albania and Scotland, not much to talk about. You had 2 ties and a loss. But again, this group was just tying themselves all the way around. So it was going to be a low-scoring point total that got them out of there regardless. On to a better group, less boring. We have Group D, which this, to me, was probably my favorite group to watch. Very entertaining ball all the way around. We had Austria, which was the surprise of the tournament, finishing first overall. Definitely some talent out there on that team. But when you're looking at France in your group, you're looking at Netherlands in your group, and even a team like Poland, who when fully healthy, they can do you some damage. They can sneak up on you. It just seemed like they had a lot of work to do. Some people were actually calling them to be a dark horse. I heard a lot of that conversation going into this, and I definitely, did not want to take a longer look at that. I had no belief in it. And now I will say I'm a believer. They play a really good style of ball, really good brand of ball, which just requires 0 mistakes to be made. And at the end of the day, they play very compact. So they're not one of these teams like, we see with these fast-paced wingers who are going to be very stretched out. They're very willing to battle it right in the middle of the field with you. And if you like that kind of soccer, this is your team right here. And they're going to score on you on the counters. They're just going to beat you up in the middle, wait to kick a counter, and they have enough talent to go ahead and finish that off. France, probably one of the underperforming teams of this tournament right now. They do have 1 win and 2 ties, so by no means are they, sitting out here shitting the bed completely. But France is probably the most talented team in this tournament on paper. And, they have, I think, an own goal, and I think that they have a penalty goal. So I don't even think they've scored an authentic goal, if you will, in this tournament.
Yikes.
And that is gross. I mean, that offense, those names on that team, you got Mbappe, Dembele, Griezmann, and that, even off the bench, it's like, anybody can come in and be super talented on that team. Mm-hmm. Nobody's doing anything. So that's unfortunate. We'll see. Their midfield's not very strong to me, France. That's the one area of weakness. They lost Pogba. Conte's kind of getting old. Rabiot, I'm not the biggest fan of. So I would say if they're susceptible in one place, it is there. But the rest of those guys won't get it together. Netherlands, as well, as one of these very weird teams. They, too, will advance as a third-place team. But they could have easily been second. This group was up in the air, until the last game, which was this morning. And I think that Netherlands, to me, is good, just not good enough. Mm-hmm. They have top-tier talent. It's just nothing that's going to really break the bank. I'm not a Memphis Depay fan. You can take that headband off, sir. Yeah, that is disgusting. Talk about bad look of the year. I don't know if Drizzy told you to do that. I don't know what was happening. But I'll be Kendrick for you and just tell you, go ahead and take that off, sit down, be humble. And he scored a decent goal today, but, these guys are just not enough. Frankie de Jong not being there, I think, is a big no-go for them. He might be their best player, most influential midfielder. I think they get knocked out easy in this next round, and they're going to face a first. They're going to face another group's one. So it's going to be really, really, really hard. Next, we have two of the, kind of bottom-dwelling groups here. But nonetheless, still some exciting ball was played, undoubtedly. We have another shocker, Romania, coming out of this group, finishing first. Not that it was a super, super tough group, but definitely did not see them finishing over Slovakia. Just pretty surprised, but They got a great jump out when they beat Ukraine 3-0.
Yeah.
So they really started off the tournament right. We talked about that being a very surprising game. And that's sometimes all it takes, right? Is you just get one of those good starts. Now you're rolling in the tournament, and especially in this group setting where it's all about points.
Trying to get a tie.
Yeah, man. You get out of there with the right points, and the right things happen with the other teams, and poof, here you go. You're in first place, exiting out of there. What I will say is there are some 2s and some 3s licking their chops at this group, going, give me that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some fishiness tomorrow in the last games for some of these other groups that settle out in terms of who's trying to see who.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a group. That and the Austria group will be very interesting in terms of who they're throwing forth at the number 1 and how other teams look at that. Belgium finished second, honestly, playing atrocious ball. Belgium is another one of those teams that, in my opinion, the golden era is just passed.
Yeah.
Those guys are done. Eden Hazard, is no longer there. Kevin De Bruyne is super amazing, but he's out there to the neck. Romelu Lukaku's past his prime, still trying to do it for him, but there's just not enough elsewhere. Jeremy Doku's amazingly talented, but doesn't quite. He's kind of like the young Raheem Sterling, where he just doesn't quite have the it yet to really contribute, but he does everything else right. And then there's a couple other names in there. Luka Baku, some of those guys that are good enough, but just they're not going to really sway you to go, man, these guys I'm confident in. And also they've been beefing with Thibaut Courtois, who's the number 1 keeper in the world, in my opinion. So he's only been playing every so often, which I find to be very funny with some of these coaches and some of the politics that goes into this stuff. There's a lot of behind the scenes that really dictates these rosters, but it wouldn't save Belgium anyway. Then we have Slovakia in third, who they will not advance because they finish again with a measly set of points at the end here. But all this whole group really came down to the last day because they all have the same record. So it's just ended up finishing on who faced who, goal differential, and then probably came down to some cards. So
these ones are tomorrow.
These games, yeah. These ones are the ones that are the finishing out of their tournament. But regardless, right now they're all finishing out. So, or at least so far, they all have the same record. So it'll be very interesting to see, because even like getting the 1, 2, 3, and 4 lined up, these are only lined up not based on points anymore. Like this is now based on whatever extra has gone in that we haven't seen on the behind the scenes. So it'll be very interesting to see Group E shake out, because really it's all up in the air, and anything will go based on the matchups tomorrow. And then we have Group F, which is we have Portugal finishing up top, another very soft group. Turkey, Czech Republic, who's now going by Chechnya, and we have Georgia, who maybe is one of the worst teams in the tournament, just in terms of like they just don't even have enough pros. They do have one guy who plays on Napoli, but like they don't even have a bunch of guys who are in top flight soccer, let alone European soccer. So it's tough to watch for them a little bit, but they were able to get a tie in there. Shout out to Czech Republic, who are terrible. Somehow have really lost their way. Back in the day with Pavel Nedved, those guys, they had some real ballers. Now I'd say their best player is probably like Patrick Schick, who's okay, a decent Bundesliga player, but none of these guys, this group ended up being very, very lackluster. But Portugal handled business. They're supposed to 2 wins. And again, both of these groups have their final games tomorrow. So I believe it's Portugal playing Georgia and Turkey playing Czech Republic or Chechnya. And I believe we have Romania is going to go ahead and play Belgium. And then you have Slovakia playing Ukraine. So that wraps up where we're at with that. Again, I'll touch bases next time once we get a little more of the matchups ironed out in terms of who ends up where. Should be some really awesome ball coming up, though. And like I said earlier, I do believe the tournament really starts in these knockout phases. It's where you start seeing the real high-end ball and people putting their boots on and giving it all a go because they know if they don't, they're going home. So I'm excited to see. So that's the Euros. There's a lot more soccer to be played, but I will make sure that, like I said, I'm keeping everything fully up to date as that tournament progresses. And then we have Copa America to finish it out, which is not as far along. The group stage is still in progress. A lot of these teams are either in game 1 or game 2. I believe most of the teams should all have played 1 now. Yeah, so we're all in game 2 or 3. Mainly should be 2. From what I'm looking at. But this is a smaller tournament as well, so a very, very similar setup, groups, and then they'll advance on to the knockouts. So we got Argentina right now leading out Group A. They were able to handily defeat Canada, and it really could have been 5-0. Ends up being 2-0, but it could have been 5-0. Messi had a couple shots that he usually would put away. But Canada is not soft by no means. So, to even say that just shows how dominant Argentina is. It really could have been 5-0. But Canada, they're solid. And I think they actually have a chance to potentially advance in second out of this group. They did handle their business today, which I'll talk about in a second. But they were able to beat Peru. The homeboy behind the camera, that's his squad. But Peru, unfortunately, got an early red card, man. Guy came in with his studs showing and came with enough force that the ref just felt, he originally gave him a yellow, went and looked at it, VAR. They told him, hey, man, take a look. He went back there. He's like, oh, no, he tried to break something. I got to go back and get him out of there. And the announcer made some super, super egregious comment. It was crazy how many times you'll see soccer announcers, the foreign ones, saying, well, I was like, hey, it's a little edgy there. But they were like, yeah, now we know why they call him the Beast. Mm-hmm. And I was like, damn, I feel like that nickname probably has a little more of a positive side to it when they gave it to him. But hey, you know what? We want to turn him into an animal right now. We can. But, we have Canada, who is now in second only because they've played 2 games. And we have Chile right now who's playing Argentina, which will also end up weighing out where these teams finish at the end of the night. But where it is right now, we have 1 Argentina, 2 Canada, 3 Chile, and 4 Peru. Peru down bad, doing bad. And, man, I'm hoping something good can happen for them boys. They can get a win to get themselves at least in a shot of advancing. If they can win that last game, they still have a shot. But the homeboy, who is a big-time player for them today, will not be playing. I forget his name, but he got red carded, and he's not going to play the next game, obviously. And then Chile in this group is just, they used to be so dope. Man, Alexis Sanchez, Vidal, these guys were just, Medel, these dudes were just ballers, and they were terrifying to go against. Another one of those cases of the golden generation just kind of fading out and nobody replacing him. On to Group B, we have Venezuela, Mexico, Ecuador, Jamaica, in that order. This group is very interesting. I'm shocked Venezuela's in first. That's definitely a surprise. Ecuador is definitely a dark horse in this thing. For those of you who aren't familiar with soccer right now, the world of it, Ecuador definitely has some young ballers, which I'm not used to saying. But they got some cats that can definitely do it, and they have a 17-year-old who just got signed to Chelsea, who is a savage, who's number 10 for them right now. So we'll see if they can turn it around. They have Enter Valencia as well, who ended up being the one who got that red card, which in my opinion is why they lost that first game. You end up giving up that red card to Mexico, and it's going to be on and popping from there. But I truly believe that they're capable of making a comeback. Obviously, one of their better players won't be there, but I'm shocked that Venezuela's in first. And then Jamaica actually has a bunch of dudes that used to be England or other nationalities that ended up not panning out there and ended up going with Jamaica. So they actually have more top-tier talent than you would think, but I don't think it'll be enough again. And it'll be interesting to see how good Mexico does in this tournament, because they are not as strong as they usually are, and a lot of those familiar names that you're used to, who were stars on that team, are just no longer there, and they were there for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see how those shoes get filled. Group C, we have Uruguay, United States, Panama, and Bolivia. This is a very, very interesting group as well. Obviously, United States, in my opinion, should be favored to get out of there. Uruguay would be right there with us, though, and I'm sure they'd have something to say about it. But, with who we have on our team, we should be able to give them a good go, and Uruguay is very, very top-heavy. They do have a couple good defenders, though, too. But they're a team that's known you can get them out of their skin a little bit. So hopefully if we can keep our composure, it should be A-OK. Panama is one of those coin flip teams. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they really just don't show up for the whole entire tournament. And Bolivia is just not good. Let's just be real. Shout out to all my Bolivians. Got some baddies over there too and stuff. But soccer ain't the thing. You know what I mean? And so they're going to probably finish at the bottom of that group. But I'd love to see how that ends up panning out. And hopefully U.S. can finish first, because we'll need that in terms of the seeding. And then finally, Group D, my favorite group. We got Colombia, my dogs, my boys, my familia. We got us in first. In second, we got Brazil. In third, we got Costa Rica. And in fourth, we got Paraguay. In my opinion, this is the group of death. This is going to be tough all the way up and down. For those who don't know, Colombia has not lost a game in a long time. We are now at 17-game unbeaten streak ever since we've gotten this new coach. And we've beaten the likes of Brazil. We spanked the USA 5-1 a couple weeks ago. So we've taken on a lot of the top teams. We beat Argentina in that run as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how we hold up. We have one of the better players in the tournament in Luis Diaz. We also are one of those hot-headed teams who is also known to, if you get under our skin, we'll get a couple red cards and get ourselves out of this tournament real fast. So hopefully we can keep our heads on straight. We do got a youngster, Joan Duran, who, again, if he can keep his head on straight, he'll be a great contributor. He's also known to get himself out of the games early. Costa Rica is going to be the real X factor in this group, determining how good they are. Paraguay has a couple good players as well, but Costa Rica's been known to be one of those teams. It's kind of like the Swiss and the Euros. They just play this tournament really well. They just play team ball, and they're willing to just get whatever points are there. They're not even trying to be cool about it. And we all know what Brazil is. Brazil's the dancing demons. They're ready to stand over that ball, capoeira your way right to the goal, and put some buckets on you and make you look bad while doing it. So a lot of these games, again, like I said, we've only had one game in it, so there'll be a lot to talk about going through it. I'd say so far the teams to stand out and really take a long look at for me are going to be Argentina, obviously playing very well, and they have Messi, who this might be his last, probably will be. So take a long look at my boy. Take a look at the United States. They're a team that's up and coming, and I think that they could. There are a lot of people's dark horses for this tournament, and a lot of people who watch world football are believers in Pulisic specifically and believe that this could be his tournament to kind of make a stamp on who he is. So take a look out for that. And then, man, you got to look out for my Colombians, man. Look out for Luis Diaz, the straight baller. Absolutely, I think could finish gold booter or a top contributor regardless in terms of goals per game. And this is a guy who is really exciting to watch. And again, it's a Colombian team that plays really well for the badge, and should be really, really fun to watch as this thing progresses out. And James is back. He dealt with a lot of mental health issues. He's got himself back out there. He looks really healthy. He looks like he's having fun playing soccer again. So, man, it's good to see our old talisman back, man. Love you, James. The stuff you brought to us in that 2014 World Cup was magnifico. But also I'll have to shout out Brazil. It'd be unfair to move forward without saying, take a peek at Brazil. Talent all over the board. If there's one guy I'd say look at on that team, it'd be Vinicius. Obviously, this guy might be best player in the world right now, right. Ballon d'Or. So take a look at him. He's super awesome to watch. And again, they have talent all across the board. So that'll wrap it up.